The Andy Pollin Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
Wednesday, and it's not a million degrees. That comes this weekend. Couldn't we just rearrange the days just a little bit so it's not so stifling hot on the weekends? All right, whatever. So we'll deal with that today. Tony's got a show at 11 o'clock. I've delved back into those South Beach sessions that Dan Le Batard has been doing. Ramona Shelburne on a couple of weeks ago told some really good Kobe Bryant stories, which we'll get to in about 20 minutes. It is also Wednesday. That means Orioles preview. And we had some technical issues with one of the voices of the Orioles, Ben Wagner, last week. So we're going to get a mulligan on that coming up at 10:30 and find out about the Birds. Are now hot again. They won 5 out of 6. They won last night in Seattle, and they won 2-0. It's a team that has had pitching problems, but Grayson Rodriguez got his 10th win last night. And they are looking like a team that's maybe kicking it into second gear for the second half of the season. They got a full game lead on the Yankees right now, and after they get finished with Seattle, they go to Oakland. The A's stink, so they can put a little bit of distance between themselves and the Yankees going into the All-Star game, which is, 2 weeks from yesterday. And, boy, what has happened to the All-Star game is just – that used to be the highlight of summer. Oh, my God, the All-Star game. We're going to get to see players from another league. And now – I wonder about this WNBA All-Star game actually outdrawing the Major League Baseball All-Star game on television, which is just incredible to me because, as a kid, it was drawing 50 million people. Yeah, 50 million people. Now it's probably about 6 or 7, somewhere in there. The World Series is averaging 9.1. Just remarkable. So we got, I guess, a little bit of closure here on the whole LeBron James mishigas. LeBron, according to Adrian Wojnarowski, has agreed to a 2-year, $104 million contract. It has a player option in it, meaning he can opt out after next year, and it has a no trade. So now this is funny to say this, but there are now 2 players in the NBA who have a no trade. One of them is Bradley freaking Beal. And the other one is LeBron James. Not that he would ever need a no trade, but they threw it in there for whatever reason. So there is a lot of flexibility there, and I haven't seen how this breaks down, but I'm just wondering, is this a backloaded deal in that they have given the Lakers, the James family, because it is now the James family. They should probably make a reality show out of this because as Bronny was being introduced yesterday, there were the proud parents off to the side, Mr. and Mrs. LeBron James. This has never happened in the NBA before, that we're going to have father and son playing together. And the reports are that they're going to give Bronny a guaranteed contract. So not necessarily is he going to go back and forth to the G League. I guess he could spend some time there, but he will have a roster spot for averaging less than 5 points a game at USC, which is pretty remarkable. So LeBron is in, got a 2-year deal. The son is in, and believe it or not, at his news conference yesterday, had the chutzpah to say, Oh, no, I wasn't thinking about Dad when I went into the NBA draft.
What about the timing to come into this year's draft compelled you to make that decision? And then how much of a consideration was, well, my father's still an active player?
For me, I always try to put that narrative of me trying to get my name out for myself. But just coming in and trying to get better, Rob has told me that there's a great development system here. So I just want to come in and get my work in and get better every day. But I never really had a thought of, me going to play with my dad, but that's always, there to, take part of. But that wasn't a main focus of mine to do.
Look, Bronny's an impressive young man. There's no question. And he's been in the spotlight for a variety of reasons, probably since he was 7 or 8 years old. What are you telling me we're supposed to believe that when you declared for the NBA draft, you weren't thinking about your dad? And the reports that your agent, Rich Paul, was calling other teams in the second round saying, you better not take him or the kid's going to go play in Australia. Come on, really? I mean, I understand, you're in a news conference situation. You haven't been in that many of them because they've really done a good job of shielding him from that as well. But, people are smarter than that. Let's be honest about this. This was about playing with Dad, and the best thing he could do right now is to go back to college and play maybe 2 more years or maybe even 3 more years. And, some of it is related to what happened last year. It's only been a year since he literally died on the court. He died on the court in practice. And fortunately, they had a defibrillator, which revived him, and later he had some heart surgery, started his season, I think, like in January, missed almost half the year, and didn't really play that much college basketball. He needs more of that. But they're talking about this big developmental thing, and, Dad's going to be there to help him in practice and so forth and so on. But come on, don't tell people that the reason you came out was, oh, yeah, I scored 4.8 points a game in college. I think I'm ready for the NBA. No, the dad factor was huge. He also thanked both J.J. Redick and Rob Pelinka, the general manager of the Lakers, for giving him this opportunity, to which this led J.J. to jump up to the microphone and say this, whoa, whoa, whoa.
I want to clarify one thing you just said, which is Rob and I did not give Bronny anything. Bronny has earned this, right? Bronny talks about his hard work. Bronny has earned this through hard work. And for us, prioritizing player development, we view Bronny as like case study 1, because his base level of feel, athleticism, point of attack defender, shooting, passing, there's a lot to like about his game. And as we sort of build out our player development program holistically, he's going to have a great opportunity to become an excellent NBA player.
With all due respect to Bronny, no one else in the history of the NBA has earned a draft pick averaging 4.8 points on 36% shooting, 2.8 rebounds, 2.1 assists, playing less than 20 minutes a game in college. No one has ever earned that in college. Now, maybe the genetics make him very attractive, I'm sure. The fact that they are able to keep LeBron happy and now re-sign with this new 2-year deal at $104 million. But come on, JJ, don't BS us with that. Everybody knows the score here. He didn't earn that. He can earn his place on the Lakers roster by improving his play with hard work. I'm sure he's a good guy, and being with his dad and all that. Those things are all good, but he didn't earn it. He didn't earn it. And you get into the whole nepotism thing. Yeah, I mean, we know nepotism happens in the NBA. It happens in coaching all the time. Happens for both whites and African Americans. Wes Unseld Jr. became coach of the Wizards. Wes Unseld Jr. was a terrible coach here. How did he get to be coach here? I think he was helped in large part because his dad is the most legendary figure in the history of the organization. We got plenty of white coaches who get opportunities because of their dads. It happens. But don't go out of your way to tell us something that we know is not true. It's not true. He got this opportunity because his last name is James and his first full name is LeBron Jr. So there's that. More NBA. Brian Windhorst was on yesterday with Tony and Mike on PTI and talked about the big moves where you got Paul George making his move and Klay Thompson making his move to Dallas, and this was the breakdown on it from Windy.
The Warriors lost Klay Thompson, who is a stalwart of all those championship teams. They lost Chris Paul, who was there briefly. Me personally, I think it's over for them. I think that it's time to go to history on the Golden State Warriors. The Warriors, at least as we knew them. In your opinion, do they have any moves left?
You may be right about them being out of contention for championship status. They do have some moves left. They did sign DeAnthony Melton yesterday. Now, I know that DeAnthony Melton, signing him the day that Klay Thompson leaves, feels a little limp. But that actually is a pretty shrewd signing. If he's healthy, he can really help them defensively. Plus, they're betting on Brandon Pajemski getting better. But really what you're asking me is there a big trade? That's what you're really asking me. And the answer is yes, I believe they are in position to make a big trade. They own 4 first-round picks they can trade. They have a bunch of expiring salary. And they have some interesting young players. Now, they don't want to part with them. I don't know if that big trade is going to happen this summer, but that big trade could happen during the season or next year. They are armed with the ammo to get into the market for a big trade. They're dipping their toes in the water for Lauri Markkanen, which would be an interesting acquisition. That would be kind of a Porzingis type acquisition, but they may not get that done. But just, they do make big deals. Let's see what happens over the next few months.
Brian, let's zero in specifically on Klay Thompson for a second. He said to LeBron, thanks, but no thanks. Said to his dad, Michael, who I've known forever, Pops, I love you, but Brian, don't tell me this is about state taxes. Why is Klay Thompson winding up with the Mavericks and not the Lakers?
Because the Mavericks are a great fit. They are a championship contender today, not theoretically, not we'll see how it goes with the new coach, not if we make 3 other moves, not if they stay healthy. They're a championship contender today. Not to mention that, they have a spot where he can walk right into. You saw in the finals, they got plenty of three-pointers, but they just couldn't hit them. Those are now going to be Klay Thompson shots. I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 400 to 500 spot-up three-pointers in this upcoming season.
Wow.
And you know that he is going to make a lot of them. Whether he shoots 37% or 41%, you know he's going to make a lot of them, and you know that he's going to thrive. And that was very clear. And Jason Kidd and Nico Harrison were sitting here in L.A. when free agency opened, and they said, here's our 5-point plan. Here's what you're going to do. Not only that, he knew for months he was not going to play for the Warriors. He knew it was over. So he spent the spring recruiting, scouting, watching where he was going to go. He watched the Mavericks play. So this just checked a lot of boxes. I do think the Lakers were in there. It wasn't like he didn't consider him. He did consider him, but the Mavericks made a ton of sense.
Nico Harrison getting it done again. Let's go to Philly. Daryl Morey, of course, has landed Paul George to go with Misters Embiid and Maxey. Brian, I don't consider this a big three necessarily, but maybe Daryl Morey does. He still seems to love his stars. Can this model work? So I guess I'm asking you, if with this roster, Philly can be at least top 3 in the East, at minimum, they got to be that, right?
They can be. Look, I'm a little bit fatigued of the big Paul George acquisition in the summer. This is the 4th time in like the last 8 years he's been a big summer acquisition. Oklahoma City traded for him. Then they re-signed him. Big deal, big deal. Then the Clippers got him. Big deal. Now he's going to the 76ers. All of those places, he's had beautiful moments, and it hasn't worked out for various reasons. So I'm just going to step back and wait and watch. The reason I think that this is a special moment is that Philly only had one choice. It wasn't like there were 4 max free agents they could choose from. There was one guy available that they could offer, that they could truly try to get. It wasn't like Paul George had 10 choices. There was one team that really made sense for him that had the money to straight pay him. These sign-in trades or whatever, they rarely work. And that match between those two parties was perfect. It is exactly the type of player they need. He won't get in Maxey's way. He won't get in Embiid's way. You need a player like that to go up against the Celtics. And so if you're looking for a reason to talk yourself into why this match is going to work, it's because this pairing is really well set up. But I have been here before in July thinking that a Paul George arrival is going to change the face of the league. And we've seen moments, but we haven't seen that actually happen yet.
Thank you for saying that, because that's what I would have said. It doesn't actually work. We'll get you out of here on this. A lot of contending teams have improved, some just by signing their own players and staying with them. Are there any teams out there that, in your opinion, have not done enough?
Denver, tough spot. Look, when they lost Bruce Brown last summer, it was because they were constrained. There were rules against them. They just couldn't even match the offer when they lost Bruce Brown. This summer, there was nothing holding them back from paying Kentavious Caldwell-Pope other than the willingness of the owners to spend, the Kroenke family, and they just didn't. And look, like if you don't believe in investing in a 32-year-old, I guess you could try to sell that, but this is your window right now. The only team that solved the Celtics all year was the Nuggets. They were 2-0 against them. Had that been the finals, I'm not sure how it would have gone. And they have now let 2 key players in back-to-back years go out the door. Now, they have a bunch of young guys, and they believe they're going to step up, but you've got Nikola Jokic in his prime right now. Denver, looking at the competitiveness of the West, looking at what Oklahoma City did, looking how Dallas has improved, looking at Minnesota, looking at all that, they're taking steps backwards. And they are in a glorious championship window, and they're taking steps backwards because the ownership doesn't appear like they want to spend. And so, to me, now let's see, we're not at opening night yet. They have other moves they could make. We'll see. But I don't think signing Russell Westbrook is going to be a difference-making move. So Denver, in my view, is getting passed up in a spot where they really messed up. They should have obviously won that series with Minnesota. They let it go, and now they've had a bad summer. They're not on a winning streak right now.
That's Brian Windhorst on PTI yesterday. I'd add this. They didn't cover this, but you wonder about Steph Curry now. Now that you've seen Clay move on to Dallas, Draymond is still there, but realistically, those 2 guys are not going to win a championship. You need another guy, and at their ages, whether that's going to happen, it doesn't seem likely at this point. And think about this. LeBron has talked about playing with Steph before, and it seemed like, oh, yeah, he's going to jump to Golden State. You know, he's going to go where the getting is good. Well, he stayed in Los Angeles. He's re-signed, signed the contract today. But Steph and LeBron are going to play together in the Olympics for the first time in their career. If you remember this, when LeBron went to Miami, when he took his talents to South Beach, the germ of that idea came from when he played with Dwayne Wade in the Olympics. That's when they started talking about that. And is it possible that Steph goes to the Lakers? Maybe not this year. Maybe he's still on the track to be the rare athlete these days who has a superstar career with only one franchise. But at 36, and where he's used to winning championships on a team that's probably not going to be close for the rest of his run at Golden State, is it something that they talk about? Is it something that they make happen? Because nowadays, superstars, they want to play with each other. They make it happen. They just say where they want to go. They say who they want to come with them, and it happens. So would it be a shock? I don't think it happens this year, but would it be a shock in the 25-26 season if these 2 old geezers, and that's what they are at this point, LeBron would be 40, 41, and Steph would be 37, 38, whatever the numbers are. Could they get together and make a run at it with the Lakers? You never know. That's how the league works these days. It doesn't work like it used to. Superstars team up at any age, and it could happen there. Ramona Shelburne, part of South Beach Sessions with Dan Le Batard, this hour-and-a-half podcast that he does. Dan is a phenomenal interviewer, and if you can keep somebody interested with one other person for an hour and a half, that's really great interviewing skills. But she told a bunch of Kobe Bryant stories. She covered him with the Lakers. They actually became friends, and she will share some of that as she told it on the South Beach Sessions as we continue. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
Orioles preview coming up at 10:30. Orioles on a bit of a heater now. They've won 5 out of their last 6. They're sitting in first place in the AL East, and we will talk to one of the voices of the team, Ben Wagner, at 10:30. I've been going through these South Beach Sessions, these lengthy sit-down interviews that Dan Le Batard has been doing. We ran some of Ted Danson the other day. A couple of months ago, he did a long one with Michael Wilbon, and we played the highlights of that. Ramona Shelburne was on a couple of weeks ago, and she has been a longtime writer and reporter with ESPN. And she developed a relationship with Kobe Bryant when actually she started covering him with the L.A. Daily News when she was a reporter there before she went to ESPN, and then kept up a relationship with him after he retired. And she wrote many things about him, wrote some feature stories, and did a lot of the reporting after the tragedy of the helicopter crash. And so she told some behind-the-scenes stories that I hadn't heard before. Some of it, fits what we know about Kobe, how much he was driven, and really how lonely he was. He didn't have friends. He was so driven to succeed, he didn't have room for that. Maybe the best friendships he had were with his family, and the tragic end that he had with his daughter, who was in his mold and was tracking to be the kind of player in women's basketball that he was in the NBA. But these are stories that tell you something about a great figure, not just in sports, but in American history, because you have to look at what a trailblazer he was. He was one of the early people to come into the NBA with no experience in college. He was a 17-year-old kid. Kevin Garnett had done it the year before, but this was new territory, and Kevin Garnett was a big man. At the time, the league valued that a lot more. Kobe was a guard, and he wasn't even 18 years old. He was 17, and he came into the NBA because Jerry West said, that's the guy I want to have. He traded Vlade Divac to the was it Carolina or Charlotte, and it was one of the great trades ever. But he had a personality where he was never going to accept second best, and here's an illustration of that as Ramona Shelburne talked to Dan Le Batard.
He loved doing the hard way. He loved he taught himself to play piano by listening to Moonlight Sonata and listening by ear and learning how to play it with his finger. I'm like, why not hire a piano teacher, dude? That would be way easier. And he's like, but it's the struggle where there's beauty. And I'm like, he
felt understood by you, though, right? You were meeting him in a deeper place, talking about He probably was super interested in how curious you were about how demonically possessed he was about being great.
Yeah, and I don't think I was still, even in those moments, I was still more balanced than Kobe was. I have this most really great athletes that are probably a bit unbalanced, right? You have to be.
I think most successful people tend to be unbalanced because to get ahead, it's almost to the lopsided detriment of other things in your personality.
Totally.
And especially in that case where he's fighting the world and the inner cities for money on cultural approval, the people he's fighting against, to be hungrier than all of them is nuts.
And to sort of never stop. Literally, there comes a point where you and I turn off the Twitter machine, right? We're like, yeah, screw that. Enough. I said what I have to. And I actually find myself doing less with social media as time goes on because I feel this is not the medium I'm going to be understood. And this is not who I want to be shouting at or the crowd I want to be shouting at. And the people that know me over 10 years of listening to me on the radio or a podcast or reading my work. And so I'm not going to let one tweet or one stupid thing be the way somebody gets to know me, whatever. And I think that's how Kobe was too, is it's about the body of work. It's about the body, your whole career and who you are and how you affected people. So, I think that's why he was so celebrated at the end, is that he let himself be understood. He found translators. I guess I was one of them.
He was looking for them at the end. I remember after he went through his turmoil, he went city to city looking for the columnists. I'm one of the ones who got a call. Hey, do you want to talk to Kobe Bryant here? He'd like to reveal portions of himself to the public.
He wanted to be understood more. Because he knew he was people were incapable of fundamentally understanding him, but he wanted at least to try, because I think he had made a lot of, what he literally trademarked slogans like this. Friends hang sometimes, banners hang forever. Literally trademarked that slogan, right? And he kind of delighted in the idea, I don't have any friends, I don't have time for them, Gotham Chopra, who did his documentary Muse, right? Gotham met him the first time, and he's always told me, he goes, yeah, we went out, we had a nice time. And then he goes, oh, it's my birthday today. And he's like, really? You didn't have to do this meeting today, man. Don't you have someone you want to go out with? And he's like, no, I'm good. In other words, he didn't have a good friend to go out with on his birthday. He was just taking a business meeting.
Yeah, how about that? And look, he grew up in Italy. His father, Joe Jellybean Bryant, had played in the NBA, played with the Sixers, and then later in his career played over in Italy. And that's where Kobe learned the game. That's where he got this possessed view of it. He looked at his father and said, yeah, he was good, but I want to be great. And he had that. And then he comes to Philadelphia when he's in high school. This is after Jellybean's career is over, and he moves back to where he's from Philadelphia. And they move to the suburbs, and he goes to a high school which would be, similar to one in Potomac or Great Falls. He's playing with kids who are going to go to college, but they ain't going to go there on a basketball scholarship. And he's, so much better than they are and miles ahead of them. And he doesn't really know how to fit in. So this way that he became this great player, he did it on the playgrounds, and he did it playing in these summer leagues. And I remember this so well when he was coming out of high school and getting ready to go into the NBA draft. We would have Tim Legler on the shows while he was still playing for the Bullets at the time. And we would say, Tim, this kid's 17. Can he play in the NBA? And Tim would say, oh, yeah. I played against him in the summer. He's ready for that. And we go, really? You serious about that? And that's how good he was. Even it would seem like if he went to Philadelphia, he wouldn't be going to the school Lower Merion High School. He would be going to the equivalent in Philly of, DeMatha or Gonzaga, St. John's, a school like. No, he didn't. And so he was sort of, fish out of water a lot of his life. And that addresses why maybe he did have trouble making friends, and he directed all his energy into being the great player that he became. This is Ramona with more on the Kobe life and the last game he ever played, the one where he scored 60 points.
Do you know what Kobe did the night after his last game? He went to church. The 60-point game where he scored 60 points on 50 shots. Shots. I know
it's crazy. Yes, it is.
And everybody laughs at that. I laugh at that. And he's like, I had no choice. They kept making me shoot. And I was like, yeah, okay, bro. Okay, man. You know what you fucking do. And he was exhausted by the end of it. But it was so Kobe, okay? And then even down to the, his speech, he knew he was going to do the speech and he knew he was going to be whatever. And then he was like, he drops the mic and he goes, Mamba out. Okay. It's amazing. It's amazing to do that. But it's also calculated. He had Mamba out shirts ready to go on his website. I mean, come on, man.
Right? Yes.
You're just he's an amazing, because he had studied storytelling and he understood how to make a myth out of your life and become a mythological creature. He had done all that.
Yeah. So that's part 2. Now this is the last part. And it's the hard part. This is where she talks about the tragedy of the helicopter crash, how she learned about it, how she covered it, and in retrospect, how it really, I don't want to say fit his life, but it's something that he kind of talked about during his lifetime, about being this kind of a comet across the sky, which is what he turned out to be, dying at the age of 41. This is Shelburne on that horrible day in January.
The world is affected by the idea of somebody who was a symbol for youth dying, that being that final, that quick, that way, and everyone does a little bit assessing of mortality, I think. Anyone who had any sort of connection to that, because you're not thinking that thing would be happening to him.
So I live about 20 minutes from where the crash was. I live in the valley, and the crash was out in Agoura. I knew exactly where it was. And I had just gotten back from Miami. I was doing a story on Duncan Robinson, I think. I had flown out there for the weekend. I had literally just been talking to Spo about Kobe, and we'd been doing and I landed the night before. So I was kind of, tired from my trip. And it was a Saturday, I think. I feel like it was a Saturday.
It was the weekend.
Yeah, It was the weekend. And my nanny was over in the morning because I was like, I need some help in the morning. I'm going to be tired, like that. And so she came over in the morning and she got the alert on her phone. And she was her face was white, and just oh my God, this. And she's like, is this true? And I was like, I don't know. And it was, you're all shaky and spinning and screaming and upset. And but then I kind of went into this my job, I guess now, is to call this sheriff and confirm this. And all the people I would think of to call to confirm it, I was afraid they were on the helicopter. I would call people and be like, he had a manager named Molly Carter. I called the security guard. He had 2 or 3 security guards that I had their numbers. I called them. I'm like, I hope you're alive to hear this message. That is a grisly task. I called the sheriff's department. They were not helpful. And then I called. We had a news editor. Her name was Alita Whithoff, and she's not there anymore. I don't even know Alita. She was great.
I don't.
She's just everything you want in a news editor, right? She just finally retired, but she was great. She was on the desk that day, thank God, because we needed somebody really good on the desk that day. Don't publish them only publish what don't guess. And I just said to her, I go, listen, I made all the calls you would make, but I think the best thing I can do is just drive out there. because I'm just 20 minutes from here. And she's like, okay, here's what they're saying is the address. And I got in the car and drove. And I think I did some radio interviews on the drive out there. Like I remember talking to Michael Eaves at some point, and I was like shaky and crazy, and we still didn't know if this was real. But I think like a lot of people saw me on TV that day because I was like at the crash site, and I think I probably looked horrible. Like I didn't put any makeup on. I just hopped out of the shower and just went, I maybe had a professional outfit on. I don't know. I don't even remember.
What are you doing here? Are you in work mode or you're
both
curious because something horrible has happened to someone? If you don't consider him a friend, it's certainly someone you admire.
At that point. No, at that point he'd retired, and we were friends. I mean, he would talk to me. We talked about our kids. Like we talked and texted all the time. We talked more after he retired than we did when he played.
Okay, so you're panicked.
Yeah,
you're
it's like getting a phone call about a friend of yours. Like it's and it's like, oh my God, like but I also had this thing where I felt like Kobe let me in. Like he let himself be known by me, or at least he tried. And it is now my job to tell the world about him. Like that was an honor that he allowed me. He did not allow everybody that close. I think he talked to a lot of people, but especially towards the end of his career, and especially after he had retired, like I think I was one of the closest people to him in terms of on this side of the media desk. I'm sure he had other friends and stuff, but I feel like the best way that you can honor your somebody you consider a friend at that point is to tell their story. I mean, that's what he was. He was a storyteller. He loved making his own mythology. Like a lot of his commercials he wrote his own commercials. Like he thought, and we talked about Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, and we talked about Achilles, and I had this Achilles. Would you rather burn brightly and die young, or would you rather live old a long time and have no one know your name? I mean, and the Achilles, like, that's what took him out as a player. Like, and there was just this, like, he went out like a freaking Achilles, right? Like, he burned brightly and die young.
Yeah, it's an amazing story, and she tells it well. She's written about it, and I'm sure there will be more documentaries and movies done about the life of Kobe Bryant, but just absolutely remarkable. And it becomes another what-if story. I mean, he was just getting started in his second career, and he had already accomplished some amazing things. He had won an Oscar for a documentary that he had produced. And who knows, where he would have gone from there. We've seen other great athletes who have had, second acts. We just lost Jerry West, who became arguably the greatest general manager who ever lived. Michael Jordan has been fabulously successful as a businessman. As he made like $3 billion selling the basketball team, and not to mention all the money that he makes from Nike and the other endeavors that he's involved in. And Kobe Bryant, I'm sure, who looked at Michael as somebody he wanted to chase, might have been still chasing him in post-basketball. I don't know whether this was ever fully explained, but when Kobe changed his number from 8 to 24, there were some who said the reason he did it is because it's one more than 23. And whether that was the case or not, or he just wanted to go back to his high school number or however it was, but that's how he did it. And I think that's how he drove himself. And, he may have looked at Michael and said, oh, Michael bought an NBA team, I'm going to buy an NBA team. Or like Magic Johnson, who's invested here in the Commanders, I'm going to be an investor or even a major purchaser of an NFL team, if that's going to be possible for him. And the analogy there with Achilles, because it was an Achilles injury, which essentially made him wind down his career. I think he played 2 or 3 more years after that, but really wasn't the same, and the team wasn't good, and he was all about winning. So I would urge you to, if you have the time to watch these, it's very rare to have someone as an interviewer who can keep you interested for an hour and a half talking to one person. But Le Batard is that good; he can do that, and it's a real skill, it's a real art. And Ramona Shelburne is an interesting person, but she's not the most interesting person who ever lived. But if you ask the right questions and you follow up and you listen, that's the main thing in these interviews. You listen and you ask questions off of what the responses are. That's how you have a compelling interview like that and some of the stories she tells about Kobe Bryant. All right, coming up, we'll get to what Tiki Barber said about Austin Eckler. Also, Orioles preview as we look at a team that's playing well right now, coming off a 2-0 shutout last night in Seattle. All that and more as we continue with Hour 2 of the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
All right, so we are rolling into Hour 2 here, and on Wednesdays we do Orioles preview. Ben Wagner will join us to talk about the team. He's one of the voices of the team. Also, we'll look at a very odd way that Grayson Rodriguez announced that he's going to participate in the Home Run Derby. This is 2024. I can just imagine if this would have been presented to somebody like, I don't know, Mickey Mantle. I guess he would do it for the money. But they pay these guys on Sunday Night Baseball about $10,000 to be mic'd up while they're on the field. This started some years ago that you'd see like a pitcher who wasn't playing that day doing an interview from the dugout. They do managers between innings. That's been done for a while. But to have this during a regular game, not an all-star game, not an exhibition, but a regular game, you got a player mic'd up, and he's talking to the announcers while the game is going on. Now, it's happened in, was it an Angels game or maybe a Dodgers game? Somebody made an error while he was mic'd up. That's one thing. When you have somebody get, hit in the face with a line drive or something, you have to be distracted to some degree when you do this. But you'll hear Grayson Rodriguez announce that he's participating in the Home Run Derby during this period of time. It just boggles my mind that the game is going on. And he goes, oh, yeah, I got an announcement to make. And, there's a foul ball. I'm going to participate in the Home Run Derby. So we'll play that audio coming up. Meantime, Austin Eckler has really been prolific in his interviews. I mean, he clearly is looking for a post-career job in broadcasting. He's really good in these interviews. He's got an office set up. I guess he lives in Los Angeles because he's been playing with the Chargers, and he's got like a command center there. Like he's ready to do these interviews. This is a guy who's going to be very successful and very driven. But anyway, and talking about the decision to come to Washington, it seems to have been Jim Harbaugh related. Not necessarily that Harbaugh was begging him to stay, but it looks like Harbaugh wants to run the football a lot more. And he's saying that they told him, well, we're looking at 300 carries a year. And he goes, oh, that's in my game. And so that's part of the reason that he wound up here in Washington. Now, maybe it was, you're getting older. We're not looking, for your type of back anyway. So it's time to move on. But that's the story he's been telling, that because of the way that they wanted to use him with the Chargers, that's part of the reason he winds up here. And look, it's pretty clear that Brian Robinson is going to be the first and second down back, and Eckler is going to be mostly a third down back. Maybe they'll have them both play at the same time, but he's not going to get 300 carries a year. You can almost be certain of that, though. We played some of what Greg Cosell said the other day on a podcast that he did in Philadelphia, where he said, don't necessarily believe that just because you've got this coach who has run a spread offense before that they're not going to run the football. He said they are likely to run the football based on the personnel that they have. But reality is, or the reality as Eckler tells it, is he's not with the Chargers anymore because they wanted to use him in a way that he didn't want to be used. So here's Tiki Barber on his radio show in New York. Let's remember Tiki Barber. Tiki Barber was a great running back with the Giants. In fact, in one of his last games, if not the last game, he just tore up the Redskins. He ran for like 200 yards. He was a terrific back. And he retired at a young age because he thought, I'm just going to step into broadcasting. And then the benchmark was, believe it or not, it was Matt Lauer, who was making like, $25 million a year. And he thought, I'll just do that and make more money than playing football. And I'll be able to do political interviews and interviews about international events. And I'll just be, more than just an ex-jock doing sports on TV. Well, in fact, Tiki was ill-prepared. He didn't know what he was supposed to do. His performances were very, very weak on TV. And he also went through a divorce because he had an affair with one of the production people at NBC. And his life was, kind of thrown upside down. He lost the job at NBC. And then he decided, I'll come back and play football. And he got himself back in shape, and nobody wanted him again. So I look at this from a little bit of an angle here, like, okay, it's coming from Tiki. But Tiki, on his show yesterday, decided to take off on Eckler because of his comments that he didn't want to run the ball 300 times a year.
It was discouraging because he was asked about why the Jim Harbaugh-led Chargers weren't ideal for him, or why they moved on from him. And you know what his answer was?
No.
They want a guy who can run the ball 300 times a season. They want someone who can run the ball 300 times
So,
a
in other words,
season.
Eckler was saying he can't do that?
Yes.
But as a running back, you should
go look at how many times I ran the ball 300 times a season.
So Eckler basically wasn't up to the check.
Well, he's just saying it's not my game. Right?
Yeah.
It's not my game to be dude, you couldn't get me off the field.
That's a tough thing for Eckler to say when he's the one waving for how much money he wants long term. You want to be a bell cow or not?
Be on the field all the time, right? Don't be a liability on third down. Catch the ball out of the backfield. Truck it through the offensive line 25 times a game, right? You want to get paid? Be that. That's what Christian McCaffrey does. That dude has so many 100% participation games in his career that it makes no damn sense. I never had a 100% participation game. That is, play every game, every snap. I've never done that. Christian McCaffrey's done it like 8 times. So you got the Christian McCaffreys of the world who make $19 million a year, and then you got these other guys who can't make 8, and you wonder why. It's a mentality. The mentality has changed from organization standpoint, and we went through this because of the statistics of big plays. Right? The running game has a very small percentage of big plays. The pass game has a huge percentage of big plays. And the easier way to score, obviously, you increase your percentage 4 times by having a big play. That's one of it. The other thing is you just got to want to be on the field.
Right.
I told you this conversation we had at the Giants 100 event the other day.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking about how players and teams are giving football players maintenance weeks.
Right, with the expanded schedule and everything.
Right, with the 17 games and the intensity and the player safety and the tracking of how much you've run in a week and all this other stuff, that essentially there are like maintenance weeks. And in my mind, that is antithetical to football.
Crazy.
To think that, I got to save my body for next week. This game doesn't matter. Are you serious?
That's crazy.
And people get mad at me when I talk about the game being soft.
Yeah, well, this old school thing that you're selling here, Tiki, it's fallen on deaf ears. It's a 17-game schedule now. They play games. Well, if you're with the Chiefs, you're playing every day of the week this year. The NFL is so greedy. They said, oh, Christmas Wednesday? That's fine. We'll play games. We'll play games on Wednesday because we get great TV out of it. It's different than the game that you left. And your analysis of football is interesting because you were the one who was crowing that you couldn't win anything with Eli Manning, and then he won 2 Super Bowls after you left. So there's that. And I don't blame Eckler for that. And it's not his body type. He's not the kind of guy who's going to carry 300 times a year. He's basically a third down back. And if you can extend your career in the NFL, not everybody's Christian McCaffrey. And Christian McCaffrey has been good enough that he was hurt so much in Carolina that it amazes me that he's still playing at this level. He's playing for a much better team now in San Francisco. But, come on, Tiki. You people in glass houses, as they say. And he's I hope he's going to be a terrific player here because for the media, it's a tremendous interview. He really does great TV and radio. All right, more on the team. We played some of what Greg Cosell said the other day about the offense for Washington and how that's going to look. This is more from the podcast that he did. It's called Inside the Birds with Jeff Mosher, and Adam Kaplan, who used to work for ESPN. And this is on the defense for Washington this year and how he believes it's going to look.
I think they could be a good front group, including the linebacker position.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's some really solid players there. Payne and Allen are obviously still there. Quinn brought in, Armstrong from Dallas, Fowler from Dallas. Cleveland Farrell actually had a very good year with the 49ers. He's borne the burden his entire career of being the fourth pick in the draft when he shouldn't have been, which is not his fault. But of course, he's developed into a really solid player, not a pass rusher in a strict sense, but for the Niners a year ago, he was a foundation piece of that defensive line because he's really, really good against the run, and he's just a solid football player. And obviously they drafted Johnny Newton in the second round. He's been battling injuries. We'll see if he's ready to play. They still have Fedarian Mathis, who I thought was a really good prospect coming out of Alabama 2 years ago, a second-round pick. So this front group should be solid. Then you get to the linebacker position. Two new guys. And, Bobby Wagner still played at a higher level for Seattle a year ago. I guess everybody's waiting for him to not be very good, but he's been good. And then one of my favorite players on tape for a number of years has been Frankie Louvu. I think that was a really overlooked, under-the-radar signing, and I think he's a really, really good player. So, this front group, Jeff, should be really good. I think the back end is where there's, I don't want to say concerns because we're at the end of June. Let's say that there are question marks and it's a major work in progress.
Yeah, Greg, let's stay on the back end because I think we'd all agree it's a pretty good front. The outside corner group, St. Juste, who's in the final year of his deal.
Yep.
When Mike Davis comes over, he's a veteran who he just did not play as well. It might have been scheme related. There's just some problems with the Chargers defense, as I understand it. Emmanuel Forbes, who got benched. Now, Quan Martin really should. Now, you talk about Sanders still being their nickel. We'll see what they do with him because he'd be more of a nickel. So, how do you see this group based on your tape study? Who's even a number one corner there?
Well, it would have to be St. Juste at this point.
Okay.
And he's got traits. And he's had moments in his first, I guess he's been in the league 3 years. He's had moments. He's long, he's pretty athletic. I think that you could feel if he can develop and reach what you probably think he can be, that he could be a quote-unquote number one type corner. Not a shutdown, top three corner in the league, Adam, but a number one type corner, just because of his size, his length, and his traits. The big question here, because of what Dan Quinn did in Dallas, is what will his defense look like from a personnel standpoint? Don't forget, in Dallas, they played a ton of big nickel with three safeties. And they do have three safeties that they can play because they signed Jeremy Chin. Derek Forrest has developed into a pretty nice player. And Quan Martin was a second-round pick a year ago out of Illinois, and he played outside corner, slot corner, and safety at Illinois. So if Dan Quinn feels that, hey, I want to play big nickel and play with three safeties, Quan Martin could be that third safety. So again, this is an unknown now. We don't know exactly how that will play out. Much depends, I'm sure, on Sanders still and how they feel he's developing, because he can be a really, really good player. But the outside corner position is a little bit of a question, and it's really tough to hide your outside corners in this league.
So, Greg, on that note, not only did Dan Quinn play more big nickel in Dallas than when he was with Atlanta, but he also he went from being a cover three guy to a man.
That is correct.
Guy predominantly. But yes. I wonder, without a player like Micah Parsons in that front seven, and he's got some good interior rushers, but nobody near that level on the outside. And with what he added at the linebacker level and what he has at the corner level, I wonder if he goes back to being more of a zone defensive mind, because I'm not sure he wants to play as much man cover with this set of personnel. I don't know. I would just look at it and ask that question.
It's a very legitimate question. St. Juste could probably line up and play man. After that, it's a question. I mean, as of now, the corner opposite him, again, new coaching staff, so everybody starts with a clean slate. We don't know about Emmanuel Forbes. The previous group drafted him in the first round, in the top 20, if I'm not mistaken, correct? I can't remember, but I think it was
first round.
Yeah.
Top 20.
So,
16.
Yeah, there you go. So what is Emmanuel Forbes? He obviously had major struggles a year ago. Now, that doesn't mean he can't play. He was a rookie corner who's 165 pounds. And, we saw early in the season when the Eagles ate him up, and it seemed like he struggled throughout the rest of the season. So we'll see. He was drafted to be a starting outside corner in this league. He's got work to do. Well, if he can be that guy, that may change Dan Quinn's approach. But, Jeff, your point is exactly right. If he doesn't feel his corners can play man coverage, he's not going to play man coverage to the degree, to the percentage-wise that he did with the Cowboys when they were the last couple of years, top 2 or 3 percentage-wise in playing cover one, close to 50% of their defensive snaps versus pass.
So Greg Cosell, who analyzes as much tape as anybody, works for NFL Films, has for a long, long time. Now, the point he makes there about Emmanuel Forbes, again, this is a guy who was taken in the first round by Ron Rivera in his last draft, and they did it in – this is like an overcorrection, like you're driving down the road and you start to skid and you turn the wheel too hard. That's what they did. They are having trouble getting turnovers, so they take a guy out of Mississippi State who had more pick sixes than anybody in the history of college football, and that's great. But he's 160 pounds, and what happened to him in Philadelphia with A.J. Brown, it was man against boy on that. That was unbelievable how he just worked him over, and he had to be benched. Now he's had a good attitude about it. He's worked hard, but he may not be an NFL player. And, yet another look at that draft and the drafts that took place in the 4 years that Rivera was here. Man, a lot to clean up. And now they finally have a system in place. Not all of it Rivera's fault, because he was taking over an impossible situation. And as we learned about him over the 4 years, he was really good, probably, or probably a good coach, like just coaching the football team, which is what Dan Quinn is going to do. He was probably pretty good at it. But the bigger the job got, the less effective he was. And even though he said, he got a general manager and Martin Mayhew and Marty Herney, who had worked with him in Carolina, everybody who came there worked with him in Carolina, running the draft, he had the final say. And he had the final say over players who really haven't worked out. And then the jury's still out on Jamin Davis. This is going to be the last year that they look at him. So, I think you have to really look forward and say, whatever's left from the days of Rivera and even before that, they're few and far between. There's a couple of really, really great players left from that. Payne and Allen and Terry McLaurin, and really, I don't know if you can go much beyond that. And the key now is moving forward is to have lots and lots of draft picks, see how they work out, and these mid-level free agents that they've signed. You've noticed, and maybe it'll happen, maybe it'll still happen, but you notice they're not running out to get Brandon Ayuk. I guarantee you, if Dan Snyder still owned this team, Brandon Ayuk would be here now, overpaid and here. It would happen. It would have happened. All right, a little baseball. We got the Orioles preview coming up in just a few minutes here. Tom Lavero did a rundown of where the Nats are and how the Juan Soto trade looks now. Now, look, remember when this happened 2 years ago? Soto had asked for, but he hadn't asked for anything, to be fair to Soto. They wanted him long term. He still had 2.5 years left on his rookie contract. So they had control over him for 2.5 more years. And they didn't want to wait till free agency. And another factor was the team was up for sale at the time. I don't think it is now. It's hard to tell. But the Lerner family had announced they were exploring selling the team. And Barry Zerluga said, no, they're not exploring. They're selling. So we assume they're going to sell. And Juan Soto is offered a $440 million contract. And he turns that down because Boris always takes his clients to free agency. So Mike Rizzo, who I think has done a spectacular job since he's been here, built the World Series team and is on his way building this team back, went to the Padres, who were thinking that they could win with Soto. And now, as Lavero points out, Soto's playing in pinstripes. He's gone from San Diego. And the other night, we all watched the debut of James Wood, who was on the field with Mackenzie Gore, who's on his way to being an effective starting pitcher, gave up just 1 run on 5 hits and 1 walk, struck out 8 5 2/3. He's 6-7 with a 3.47 ERA in 17 starts. That's, at this stage of the game for him, you'll take that. And then you have C.J. Abrams, who I think is going to be a star in this league. In this game the other night, he went 1 for 3 with 2 walks, 2 runs scored, and has 13 homers, 42 runs batted in, 14 stolen bases, 284 average. That's everything you want in a shortstop he's actually a great fielder as well. So that's a guy, and I mentioned to Mike Rizzo when I saw him a month or so ago, I said, you got to lock him up long term. And he said, well, we got control over him for a while. I think it's might be another 6 years, if I'm not mistaken. So they're in good shape with him. And now James Wood, okay, he may go into a slide of over 12, but he's getting on base. He didn't get a hit last night, but he did walk. He's got real speed on the bases, and he plays good outfield. He's got a great arm. He looks like an outstanding athlete. And as I mentioned this yesterday with Michael A. Taylor, and this Tom and I have done a lot of radio over the years, and he used to talk about, if Michael A. Taylor becomes a star in this town, this can be huge. An African-American star for the Nationals would be monstrous for them. And Taylor turned out to be a decent player who was a really good outfielder who just struck out too much. You couldn't put him in the lineup every day because of his ability to inability. Let's say not even working the count, not even able to get on with walks and things because he had speed on the bases. And I think he's still in baseball. It was maybe Kansas City, but he didn't. It happened. This guy has a chance to be a star, and the fact that he's homegrown is even better. Went to St. John's, grew up in Olney. His profile will grow, assuming, he becomes the hitter that everybody thinks he can be, and he tore it up in AAA before he got here. And as Lavero writes about the 3 of them, all 3 on the field, same time in a Washington uniform, and Soto is now wearing the Yankee pinstripes. He says that's Pepto-Bismol from the Padres and their fans. 3 prospects, all in Major League uniforms for another team, and the star that they have already given up for is gone already. And there's more on this. Like the Ginsu knife, there's more. They got 2 other pieces in that trade, Robert Hassel III and pitcher Harlan Susana. They're still in the minor leagues. Hassel's batting .278 with 3 homers, 14 runs batted in, 11 steals in 49 games in Double-A. And Susana has been, though he's struggling in Single-A with a 1-7 record and a 4.91 ERA, you never know with pitchers. Pitchers can snap out of this. So they could go. Looks like they've already gone 3 for 3 in this trade. The way Hassel's playing, it looks like they're on their way to going 4 for 4. And maybe if Susana gets right, you go 5 for 5 for, yes, maybe the best player in the game. Certainly, Ohtani will get attention, but, Soto's right there, and he's younger. He's only 25 years old. You still look at this and go, Rizzo knows what he's doing. And he points out that his dealings with Preller and the Padres have turned into a win for Washington. Apparently, Preller's been there quite a while. Ian Desmond was a 2-time All-Star shortstop for Washington when rather than sign a 7-year, $104 million contract extension, he became a free agent the following season. That actually blew up in Desmond's face. He never made that kind of money again. Rizzo replaced Desmond at shortstop with Trey Turner, who was acquired along with pitcher Joe Ross in a deal with San Diego in 2014 in a 3-way deal with Tampa that would bring Will Myers to the Padres. Myers would have 8 solid years in San Diego, but Turner would emerge as one of the top shortstops in baseball and would help lead Washington to the World Series in 2019. Turner got traded to the Dodgers in 2021 in the fire sale that they're still recovering from, but Rizzo found success with San Diego. So, that tells you a lot about someone who's been a baseball lifer like Mike and really understands, the prospects. He's looking at these guys, not in a way that, a lot of teams look at players. And, this is a period of time where they're having to decide what they're going to do. I think, even if they somehow get hot the rest of this month, I think they've reached the point where they really have to say, let's look down the road. And when you look at, the guy who started last night for Washington, the left-hander, DJ Hers, he was a trade deadline deal with the Cubs for, a run-of-the-mill player, Heimer Candelario. That they got him for essentially half a season for a guy who looks like he has an opportunity to be a longtime starter in this organization. He's left-handed, which you got to like. He had 10 strikeouts last night. The other thing, of watching the game last night, he comes out after 5 1/3. He did throw 92 pitches, but he's cruising along. He made one mistake. He gave up a home run, and it is 2024, but I just have to laugh. He gets taken out of the game. He's given up one run. I think they got a runner on, but there's 2 outs. And he comes out of the game with a big smile on his face. And I'm thinking, yeah, I know it's old school, and I know baseball doesn't work this way anymore. But and we're talking about a guy who is a veteran. But can you imagine if, I guess it was Red Schoendienst, the manager, he's got Bob Gibson in the 6th inning. He's given up 1 run. He's struck out 10. They didn't keep track of pitches. And Schoendienst wants the ball. Gibson probably hits him in the mouth. Like, what are you doing? I'm cruising along here. This guy had a 1.12 ERA in 1968. But this is baseball, and you don't go through the lineup 3 times. It's only twice. And this is a kid. Don't take any chances. Unfortunately, they gave up the tying run. It went to the 10th, and the Nats bullpen blew up, and they gave up 5 runs. And now it's 7 games under 500. I think they cannot be thinking about postseason now. They have to be thinking down the road and be sellers. That's my thoughts. We'll get to Orioles thoughts next. Orioles preview. Ben Wagner, one of the voices of the team, will join us next.